Hey guys, can I remember the series premiere of Animal Kingdom, the new show on TNT? Now, before I start this review, let me just say it's a review of the first episode, not both episodes. TNT only put the first episode online early. I decided I'd watch it early. That's why I'm reviewing it now. I was gonna do like a recap thing like I usually do, but luckily the website that have recaps put it on there. You guys don't care about this, but I know also there's not an intro. There's no intro to this show for episode 1. I don't know if there's one for episode 2. All I know is that this episode did not have an intro. Either way, I was really interested in this show, mainly because for a few reasons. One, it looked really intriguing, and two, it looked really different from anything TNT has done, because this looked like this was trying to be TNT's version of Mr. Robot, the way that what Mr. Robot has done for USA, the way this made people think differently of USA. USA, if you notice, has different kinds of shows now. They don't just have, a bunch of political and police dramas and procedurals, and that's what TNT is pretty much right now. It's all procedural shows, and there isn't really a big show for them right now. And most people say that TNT hasn't really had a hit show since Southland, and obviously, well, there is The Last Ship. I heard The Last Ship was really good, and I heard Falling Skies was really good, and yes, they have Rizzoli and Isles, but Animal Kingdom is a much different kind of show for them, and I think that's definitely something we're looking forward to in this show. And let me just say that while this wasn't a perfect first episode, while I do think it has problems, overall, a really good start. I definitely really like it overall. I'll talk about the problems that the show has, but I do think that the first, few minutes of the show was very well handled. I really like the way it was done because it was very subtle. You don't really know what's going on. We see paramedics. They're coming to a heroin OD. They try and revive the woman. The guy is just watching a game show on TV. We don't know who he is, and they check her pupils. He then looks over at her, then back at the TV. We see him doing homework and dishes later, and you can just tell already the grief is, really looming over him. We don't know who this woman was, but he calls his grandma Smurf and says that it's Josh, or as he likes to be called, Jay. And basically, his character's name is Joshua J. Cody. We're going to call him Jay, obviously. She says it's been 11 years and asks how he is. He says his mom OD'd and died, and she tells him and right away she says, pack your things, and he says, okay. He asks if she knows where they live. Smurf shows him to pick him up, and basically, she asks if the one bag is all he has. He says that in his bike, and Smurf asks for a hug. She embraces him and kisses his cheek. She goes inside their place, and you can tell right away that Smurf's just very affectionate the way she is, but not unlike other, grandmothers would be. She goes inside their place, searches the dresser until she finds a shirt, and she shoves it in her bag, goes back outside, and basically, we don't know why she's stealing this shirt, but clearly there's a reason why. And she goes back outside, and a guy then comes asking for Julia. Obviously, his mom tells Jay that his mom owes him $90. He rifles his pockets, and the dealer says he's going to drag her by her hair to the corner. The dealer walks off, and Jay says it was no one. She drives into her place, and Jay is surprised at everything they have. They have classic cars, a jet ski, and she curses when she hears the smoke alarm. She left something in the oven and it burned. And at first I'm like, really, lady? Like, when you go to when you leave a house, you should probably leave the oven off because obviously it's going to burn. And we see there are stacks of cash on the counter, and you can just tell the way they kind of, just close up on things. I thought was really well done because it's a very subtle way of showing that something is off about this family. And basically, she goes outside, yells at her sons, and we're introduced to a bunch of characters in this one scene right here, basically. We're then introduced to Jay's uncles, Darren, Baz, and Craig. And I gotta say, none of these three characters are really all that compelling. That's really my main problem with first episode, is that these three specific characters, I just don't really care for them yet. Not that they're bad or anything. I think they're, the actors are fine. It's just the characters in this first episode, I just didn't really care about them. The other three are great, but these three I just didn't really care as much for. Baz offers him a beer, but Jay says no. Smurf says during an hour, offers to make cupcakes. He says he's not hungry, and it's because obviously the other cupcakes were burnt, so she's saying she's going to make more. He says he's not hungry, he's just tired. Smurf says he had a rough day and tells him to go take a nap. Smurf tells Duran to take him to Pope's room, and we don't know who Pope is. Duran says they've got all their own places, but crash there when they want to, and it keeps Smurf happy. And his grandmother, his grandmother, and Duran is his uncle, one of his mom's brothers, and they bring in a TV and hand him some cash to get him some decent sneakers, and they tell Smurf they can't trust the kid, and they don't know what Julia told him. And I can understand, they can't just welcome this kid in with open arms. They don't really know who he is. Obviously, he doesn't really fit in, and Smurf says that Julia was too high to tell him anything. They tell her it's a stupid risk to take before a job, and they shouldn't just let him in, because he clearly does not know the extent of what they're involved in. Now, we don't really know what they're involved in, but clearly they're involved in some really shady shit, just the way way they're talking. And Smurf tells them to stay on Jay tomorrow and suss him out. Smurf says shut up, then asks Duran if he's jealous. She says the next one to say a word won't get a share of the job, and she yells them to clean the dog shit off of her deck, stomps off, and Jay then does his homework when Tommy texts Julia's phone wanting his money. He has enough cash to pay him now thanks to his uncles. Luckily, he has the cash, and I was worried this was going to be a problem, but no, luckily he's able to give his uncle the money. Jay then wakes to kitchen noise in the morning. He goes downstairs, and his uncles are talking about security cameras, basically. We don't know what they're really talking about, but his grandma is in a bra and a robe, and already you can tell the way she acts around her sons is not a way a normal mother does. I think the best way to talk about it is the original Norma Bates. Not the Norma Bates in Bates Motel, but the Norma Bates in, the original Norma Bates. The one that had this very incestuous relation with her sons. That's exactly who she is. She's very, she's very incestuous, clearly, and Craig comes in naked, yelling about the noise of the juicer, and he gets off of, like, 2 other women. We don't know who these women were, but I was just like, holy shit, like, clearly he had, like, a foursome or something. He threatens to bash Id with a hammer, and Jay says he has to go to school, but they want him to go surfing instead and literally tell him to not go to school, and Baz goes home to his son, and you can really tell that they're not a good influence on him. Baz is the one character, though, that seems somewhat grounded. He seems like he actually is good. Like, he's not actually a bad guy, and he does have his own life, and Craig and Duran, however, clearly are trying to kind of ruin things for Jay. And Duran and Craig take Jay surfing. They bully some other surfers, and then one calls them trailer trash losers because they really are. I mean, the way that they look, they don't really look like nice people at all. They nod at Jay, who follows them back to shore. They wait until the other guys come back to their vehicles, see their straps are all cut, and one walks over to them to confront them, and they hand Jay a gun, and they tell him, show them who's king. He pulls the gun on them. The surfers freak, obviously, because, he just pulled a gun on them, and Duran asks if it gave him a stiffy. The guys leave in a panic, and he says, look, we got new surfboards. And just the way that scene was done was really interesting. Again, you just don't trust these guys. Something is very off about them. You don't know what it is, but just something about these guys are very shady. And it's a party then back at Smurf's house. Catherine tells Smurf that her daughter Lena had a fever all night. Smurf cares for her. Lena doesn't want him daredeviling like his brother's jumping off a roof. They want Jay to take a turn, and they all chant Jay. They don't want Jay to turn out like his brothers, clearly. Like his uncles. And one of his uncles grabs him, pulls him off the roof down to the pool with him. He smiles, and literally, I mean, the way that was done was just crazy. He sees someone left with a GoPro on his bed, some new clothes, and in the closet he finds a whole wardrobe. And he's really wondering, how did they get all this stuff? And Pope is there, and right away we're introduced to this character. And this is my main problem with the episode, is that Pope, as good as a character as he is, it doesn't give us really much time to focus on Craig, Duran, and Baz, because Pope and Jay clearly becomes the main focus of this episode. You can just tell. And I don't think that, Duran, Craig, and Baz, I feel like we could have focused on them just a little bit more, and if we did focus on them, I would have enjoyed their characters more. Not that they're bad characters, it's just we didn't really get to focus on them in this episode for me to really care. I mean, Baz I kind of care about because he has his own family, but Duran and Craig I literally don't give two shits about. Right now they kind of just seem like really mean guys that are just douchebags. They seem like those guys that are just, really rude, and they don't really care much. I mean, they're taunting people at the beach even. They seem like straight up bullies, and they don't really seem like nice guys at all. But then we're introduced to Pope, and right away, this guy is really shady. You don't know who he is. He's there. He has who he is. He introduces himself to Pope, says he's Julia's kid, and Smurf comes in, hugs Pope. Smurf tells Pope he should have let them know he was coming home. Jay sits with them. Baz glares at one for making a drug joke, and Smurf says it's about time the parole board came to its senses. He did 3 years and 19 days, and Smurf says they're happy he's home. Sorry he came home to the news about Julia, and Jay says he's going to his girlfriend's place. Smurf says bring her by sometime. He says okay, and Pope asks if he's living there, and asks if he's all a part of it now. And just the way the Pope talks, this guy is shady, he's weird, and again, I think the best way you can describe him is like Danny in Bloodline, but imagine if Danny was like much more destructive and was just so violent. And Danny was violent obviously, and it always seemed like there was, he was a ticking time bomb, but this guy seems even more like one. It helps that Ben Mendelsohn actually played Pope's role in the movie. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm comparing him to Danny, because I definitely do see the parallels in Pope and Danny, and you definitely do see that. So by the way, guys, I am continuing to watch Bloodline. That review is coming soon. I just don't know when. But basically, Smurf says that he's been there a day. And Pope says that he'll drive him, but Jay says that he's got his bike and takes off. A car crow rolls out as he comes out, and he sort of slips out when they stare as they drive by. And he rides off at a good clip, and he goes to the beach. He rides down the road. Smurf makes meatloaf for Pope, and Baz hands him a beer. And they tell him the kid seems okay. That doesn't seem like there's anything really wrong with Jay. And Smurf says that even Craig thinks so. Craig clearly is the kind of like the guy that's just rude and doesn't really like Jay much, but he does see that Jay's a good kid. Jay's not at all a bad guy. And Pope asks what they're playing next, but Smurf says that he just got out, and you can tell that Pope, he clearly is the black sheep of this family, and they really don't want anything to do. It's not they don't want anything to do with him, but they are a bit startled that he showed up unannounced like this. Who just shows up unannounced without saying, hey, I was released from jail? That's just not normal to do. It's a better thing to do. It's a good incentive to have to tell someone, hey, I was released from jail, then just randomly show up, and it just felt weird. So, and supposed to, and she says he has to sit this out, says sleep on the sofa a night or two. She says he can't stay there, so parole officers are dropping by to give him piss tests, and Pope says that he'll go to his place, but Baz says that they sold it, and they'll get him a new place. And Pope is annoyed Jay is with a girl, and basically Pope is very annoyed, obviously they sold his place. Jay is then with this girl who's very attractive, man. Honestly, Jay knows how to pick girls, definitely, because this girl was hot as shit. She pops off her panties, climbs on him with a joint. He turns his head when she tries to blow pot smoke in his mouth. Clearly, he's trying to turn him on. She says how she has to help with their homework, says that I think she says she was rubbing herself when she was in class, thinking about him. She asks what's the matter, and he tells her about his mom's OD. She asks if he's okay, and he says that he's with his grandma in Dibmar. And this is the thing I like, is that while she is sexual, she is very supportive, and you can definitely see she's a good girl. He says his mom and grandma weren't close. Jay seems very distracted, and you can really just tell that Jay feels very out of place. He hasn't really had a lot of time to deal with Julia's death, and he's not really getting the time to do that. He doesn't really feel like he should be in this place. Think of everything that Jay's dealing with. I think they very well show in this episode, just the way all this is happening. He's not used to it, and he just feels very out of place in this home, clearly. So the other three brothers talk about Pope being in jail and how much he got raped, and they joke about that they'll stab him in the face if he hears that, and they talk about it being easier with Pope gone. Baz gets angry at Duran. They roll up on some tweakers and beat them up. They shove a couple in the car and lock them in. They want them to foul up their car, and they literally, they're taunting these couples, and you don't really know why they're doing this. It doesn't really seem like there's a reason they're doing this other than they just want to cause problems. And again, that's not really likable, and I get that they're not supposed to be likable. There's really nothing about Craig and Duran that make them compelling. Baz at least, has some limits where he says, no, I don't want to do that. And basically, we then see Pope sits watching TV. Jay comes in. He has to cut his hair, and he says his girlfriend. And Pope asks if she does his hair, if she'll do his hair. And he asks where the boys are. He says no. And you can definitely tell this is a guy that you don't want to leave Pope. You don't want to leave Pope with a girl. Just the way he acts. Pope tells Jay that he can tell him things. He says he was his mom's twin after all. And Pope says they slept in the same bedroom for years. He says Julia was scared of thunder. Pope says if you're ever scared or want to talk, he's here for him. And Jay walks out, obviously creeped out just the way Jay talks to him. And also I think Jay is just, again, feeling a bit out of place. He doesn't feel like he's part of this family, just the way everything's been. He just can't really get over his mom's death, and he's still trying to get over his mom's death, and until he gets over her death, he can't really find a place in this family. You definitely see that here. And I really like the way that was done. You definitely can tell the way that Jay is kind of separating himself from this entire family because he feels out of place. It's very understandable the way that was done, and I really did like seeing that. I thought that was definitely a very well done scene. And I thought that was definitely one of the best things shown in this episode. So Smurf helps Jay with his tie, and Duran comes in, comments on him wearing his shirt and tie. Jay notices that Smurf had a shirt like that and says Julia used to borrow it from her. It's the one she stole from the dresser, we find out, and Smurf calls him beautiful boy, pats down his hair. They head to the funeral, and at the graveyard, it's a small circle of people. Actually, it doesn't seem like many people knew Julia, and Pope stares at Catherine, makes her uncomfortable. Smurf, and we don't know who this Catherine girl is, but clearly, Catherine is creeped out by him, and it seems like anyone would be creeped out by Pope. Just the way he looks at you, he seems very scary. I'll get to them when we talk about the acting, but Smurf asks if anyone wants to say anything. A woman across from them tells Jay that they don't belong. It's a neighbor. Jay tells Dinah not now. Dinah says his mom tried to protect him from them. Jay says he's fine, thanks Dinah for coming, and says not here, please. Craig tells her to get the hell out of there, and we don't know who Dinah is, but clearly she's not a fan of the family, and I like that. I do think there were a couple in characters we were introduced to, but I do like seeing the perception of this family. This is not a very liked family. This is not a very, balanced family. It's not a normal family at all. This is a very corrupted family that clearly no one is a fan of, and Diana turns to walk away, some others follow, and Jay's girlfriend Nikki is there too. We finally get a name for her, Nikki, and they lower the casket into the ground. Pope and Baz follow Smurf as she walks away. They go to work by her coffin to pay respect. Craig jokes about them being Lutheran. Literally, this guy is constantly cracking jokes, and nothing is funny that I'm gonna say right now. Nothing he says is funny. He's just really just off-putting. He's very strange, and I'm not a fan of Craig really at all. Duran says it must have been cheapest. Baz talks to Pope, who says he wants it on the job. Baz says he'll get cut, but can't do that, and Baz says after Pope got caught, they changed up what they're doing, and Baz says that it's Smurf's call. It's Smurf makes the decisions now, and Pope says it was 16 seconds. Baz would be in jail, not him, and Baz refuses, then says they need another car by 3 a.m. at the usual spot. He says the car and nothing else. He walks away. Jay then sits with Nikki. She asks about his new shoes. He says his mom left him a trust fund when she asked where he got the money. Then Nikki asks why he didn't cry at the funeral, and I think again it's because, people deal with grief differently. Some people don't just cry. Some people really need time to decompress, especially guys, definitely. I mean, when someone died, I mean, I wouldn't know because I haven't really had anyone that major died in my life. Like, really, the only person I can think of that died that's major is my grandpa, but he was like 2. I was like 2 when he died, so I can't really, think of anyone close to me that died, but I think just the way that Jay, was handling death felt very realistic, and I really like that. So Craig pulls up and says they've been looking for him. He tells them both to jump in. They tell him to leave the bike because they got him a new one. They stole it, and they tease him about having a pretty girlfriend. At dinner later, Craig offers Nikki $200 if she can catch a piece of bread in her mouth, and she does, and he pays up, and again, it's silly. It really is dumb. Baz, and just scenes like that I thought were just really silly. I get it's supposed to be the family just having fun, but it's not fun. It's really bullying, and I understand that, but it's just Craig is by far the most unlikable character in the show. Craig is the one character that I can't stand so far, and Baz then finds Jay in the bathroom. He says Nikki's great. He asks if Jay gets good grades, and he says he gets by. Baz says good since they've got too many dropouts in the family. Jay tells him he's okay when he asks, and then Baz asks if Pope is giving him trouble, because obviously Pope is very troubled, and you can tell that the family does not receive well to Pope, and Baz advises him to tread lightly with Pope. Craig then snorts coke in front of Jay and Nikki, and Baz tells him that it's not a good time to get mellow. Craig offers Nikki some, and Jay says no. She looks at Jay, says she'll stick with weed. Craig tells Duran to get her another coke, and Baz leaves her home. Craig keeps snorting coke. Nikki stares, and Baz hits a store and picks up milk. A detective approaches him, and Baz literally ignores the guy. Pope sits staring at Jay and Nikki, who are asleep on the sofa. Such a creepy scene, just the way he's staring at them. What the hell is wrong with this guy? I don't know what it is, but this guy, I mean, he's crazy. He really is. And he gets up, he goes over to them, he literally picks up Nikki, carries her off, takes her to her bedroom, lays her down, brushes her hair off her face. I thought he was gonna end up like drugging her or raping her or something, but he doesn't. And Jay then comes in. Pope says she's beautiful. Luckily he came in, because I really feel like Pope would have done something to her if Jay would not have come in. But Pope says she's beautiful. He walks out of the room, and it's such a creepy scene, just the way that was done. I mean, just something, you cannot trust this guy at all, and Jay definitely can't trust this guy in any way, shape, or form. You definitely get that sense here. So Jay is in the shower when Pope comes in and asks if he's any good with cars, and Jay asks how he means. He says he's okay. Pope says they need a car for the thing and tells Jay to get dressed, and they'll go. He asks if Baz says he should go with him. Pope says hurry up. Pope waits in the car while Jay is being roughed up by a guy. Pope walks over with a mag light, cracks the guy upside the head. He tells him, "You don't remember our faces," and he checks his wallet, says he knows where he lives, hands Jay the keys, says take the car, gets in, cranks it, and Pope watches him drive away. The brothers go back for the SUV with the tweakers in it, and they agree they should keep the crime lab busy. They have masks on, load into the vehicle, and they toss the tweakers onto a road, and they take their cuffs off and leave them with drugs that they grab greedily. And Jay comes back all battered, and Smurf asks what happened. She asks what Pope did. He says he took him for a test ride, and Pope says, "You want him to learn, don't you?" And Smurf says, "Don't do that again," without asking her. And he asks if she's going to stop him, and Smurf is angry, calls him Andrew because that's his real name, grabs his wrist. Jay says leave her alone. Smurf says it's okay. Pope literally grabs him into a headlock. He lets him go, then says, "Good boy, you pass." And again, Pope he really is shady, and Pope walks off swinging from his bottle. Smurf wants to put ice on his face, but Jay walks away, because again, he doesn't feel like he's part of this family yet, and he gets on his bike, rides away. He goes back to his old apartment. You get the sense he might end up staying there. The lights have been shut off. He goes through some trash bags, because that really is his home. And, he says, their stuff has been stashed. He gets out some photos, and Baz, Duran, and Craig are on the job. They buckle up, put on helmets. They drive through the window of a jewelry store. They smash and grab. A watch beeps. They run out. They head to a roof, make their break, and Duran drives getaway, but they run to security. security guards. They curse their brother who said no security. A guard fires on them. They knock one to the dumpster. Craig gets shot in the shoulder, and I just don't really care about this crime stuff going on. And that's the one thing I just don't care about. Why? Because I don't really care about the characters involved, especially Craig, who right now is the weakest thing about the show and really is annoying me. Jay, and it's sad because everything else I think is really good. So Jay calls and asks for Gary. He says he's looking for his dad. He used to live there 15 years ago or so, and the guy asks if he knows his dad's last name. Jay says no, and the guy hangs up, and Jay is upset. And you get the sense that this is going to be a big storyline. He's going to try to track down his dad because he doesn't know where his dad is. He has no place to go but back to Smurf, and he starts crying because he really doesn't want to be there. He feels very out of place, and he leaves the apartment, and the drug dealer's there demanding money. The guy says he's going to take his bike. Jay attacks him, takes his gun, and I feel like he definitely did this because this was just, you could tell that this was, the grief was just Jay waiting to come out, and finally got to him. He says she's dead, a asshole from the shit he sold her, and the dealer says that they're cool. He doesn't owe him anything. He puts the gun into his neck hard. Then Jay backs off. He keeps the dealer's gun, rides off on his bike. It's dawn. He rides it onto the pier. He watches the waves. The sun comes up. He pulls out his mom's phone, looks at it, then tosses it into the ocean. Pretty much, I think, just realizing that she's dead and not being able to get over it. And I think this is just him realizing, you know, she's dead. She's not coming back, and I need to get rid of that part of my life because really all that stuff in my life is over. And he goes back to Smurf's place. They're shouting inside the house. Craig is in pain. They cauterize the bullet wound. Jay walks in, just walks by them, and literally just walks by because he literally could not give two shits about Craig, which I don't blame him for. And Smurf tells Duran it's okay as he cries, says security wasn't supposed to be there, and she sings to her youngest son, and Jay goes into his bedroom, looks at the gun he took from the dealer, and you're wondering what he's going to do with this gun. Pope then walks over, asks if he's alright, and Jay says yeah, he was just riding around. Pope tells him something, says give it to Nikki. It's a gold watch from the heist. Pope says the girls like shiny stuff. Really creepy overall, but that's the way the episode ends. Really good stuff overall, but let's talk more about this episode. So overall, guys, really great first episode. I really like the way things start out here. I think we had really good stuff in this first episode. There is problems with this show, but there are a lot of really good things that make up this show, especially the acting, which let's just get into that. Probably out of all the summer shows so far, this is one of the most solid ensemble casts so far on TV. I think everyone really did a great job. But let's first talk about our main character here. Finn Cole as Jay, I think is one of the best parts of this show. He just did such a great job as this character. Because like I said, you can tell he's going through a lot. He's grieving over his dead mother. He's trying to figure out what's, you know, if he can move on. He really doesn't feel like he belongs in this family. And you can tell he is slowly starting to adjust, but it's only the first episode, and I think he definitely did a very good job with that. He gave a very subdued performance, and I really think he carries the show very well. I'm really interested in seeing him exploring more about his, you know, his character, what he went through with his mother, you know, his tracking down his father. That's something I really did like. I think they really introduced that very well, and I really like where his character is headed. He overall was fantastic and definitely one of the best parts of the show. However, without a doubt, the scene stealer of the show and the person that I can give the most credit to, and I think the person that's most worthy of awards, is Ellen Barkin as Smurf. She is amazing on the show. I mean, you can tell she's not a normal mom. She clearly has a very incestuous relationship with her son. She's very possessive. She's constantly wearing revealing clothing. She's a bit one-dimensional right now because most of her scenes in this episode is her pouting or her saying, you know, this is how I make the rules and this is just how it goes. But overall, I think she does a very good job, and you can see she generally does care about her family, even though she's very weird and things like that, and she's not at all a normal mother. She does care about her sons, maybe a little bit too much, but I think that's something that definitely does work, and she definitely anchors the family, and she definitely deserves to be the head of the family. I think she does a great job. I really do love her character. I don't know if she's as good as Jackie Weaver was in the original movie, because I didn't see the original movie, but overall, I think she does a very good job. Really love her character, and I think she definitely is not alone, you know, her alone, she can carry the show. But the other person that definitely deserves to be credited is Sean Hayden as Pope, because this guy is shady as shit. I mean, he's just, something about this guy, he's just off. I mean, you look at him, and he just looks scary. I don't know what it is about him, but he's just really weird, and there's something definitely off about him, and we don't really know what happened to this guy, if something happened to him in his past, but clearly he seems like he's this, you know, just cannon waiting to explode, and I feel like the moment is definitely about to come. It did kind of come in this episode, but you can definitely tell he kind of cares about Jay, but at the same time, you don't know if he wants to. You also don't know if he kind of wants to just hook up with Nikki. I mean, it's just really weird what's going on with him, but I really think he did a great job, because I doubt that he's actually like that in real life. Sean Hayden really had a tough job here, and definitely big shoes to fill because it's Ben Mendelsohn, but I definitely think he pulled it off. He did a great job, and he definitely was one of the standout things about this episode. But as good as those three are, like I said, my problem with this show is that our other three characters, Craig, Duran, and Baz, just don't really stand out to me. Now, Baz kind of does because he's different from Duran and Craig in the sense that he seems to care for Jay, and he actually does want to make things good for Jay, and he doesn't really want to taunt him, while Craig is just a straight-up asshole. He clearly is. Duran is the youngest of the family, you can definitely tell, and I think that's kind of why, maybe because they're more immature than the others. I think that kind of shows that as well. But the writing here is great. I really do think the writing is fantastic in the show. I just don't really care about the crime part of the story, and I'm sure I'll care more, but right now, that part of the story I don't really care about. I care much more about the family dynamic. I think as a family, they all work really well together. You definitely do see that, and I think that's definitely something I really did enjoy. The cinematography here is great. Just the way the show looks, I think, is a very, very good. I definitely really do like it. It's a very realistic show as well. You can definitely tell it's a very, I think, realistic portrayal of grief, especially the way that Jay handled it. That was something that definitely stuck out to me. The editing here I thought was fine. I honestly heard a lot of people say the editing was all over the place, but for me, the editing I thought was fine. Maybe a bit too long. I think there were one too many scenes of just Duran and Craig cracking jokes, but other than that, I really did enjoy what we got here. This was a very solid first episode. Definitely interested in seeing, how the show's going to be, what else we're going to explore. Definitely I'm going to continue watching, and it definitely is a lot better than Feed the Beast, which I'm probably going to stop watching after tonight's episode because I heard it was not good, and we'll see if I continue watching Feed the Beast. I'll still watch tonight's episode, but if tonight's episode is not good, guys, I'm done. Why? Because this show is a lot better than I think that show will ever be. This show is really interesting. I really do love where it's going, and so far, I'm pretty much hooked. I really do love where the show is going. Overall, I really do love the first episode, and despite those few complaints, this was a really great premiere. Really looking forward to watching the second episode, but let me know what you guys thought of the show. Love to hear your thoughts in it. How was this first episode? Again, I didn't see a second episode. I am going to watch the second episode probably right after this review, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.